all. Thank you for joining us on a lovely Saturday afternoon. Our presenter today is Dr. Asha Nair. She's a cardiac intensive care physician at Boston Children's Hospital, and she'll talk about her experiences in medical training here in the U.S. and also abroad. And while she does that, she'll put that in context of leadership. So let me hand it over to Dr. Nair. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As Yagna mentioned, my name is Asha Nair. I currently work as a cardiac intensive care physician at Boston Children's Hospital. So I'm a pediatric physician. And I want to thank the organizers for having me give this talk today. And everyone who's joining us will be listening in the future. I hope you get something useful out of it. And I'll try to make it as useful and relevant to you guys that are all listening in. And I'm going to get started. So I have to be honest, initially when I was approached about this topic, I think I was a little hesitant and thought, am I even a leader? And I think it's a normal human reaction to kind of have a little self-doubt and wonder if you have enough experience to really be someone worthy of giving this talk. But I think, to be honest, I think a lot of people can. And I think just thinking about myself, I think in certain aspects of my life, I am a leader. In certain other aspects, am I a leader? Maybe, maybe not. Hopefully I will be. And so I think that goes to the fact that there's different kinds of leaders. You can be a leader in different aspects and phases of your life, whether it's professional, educational, personal, at home. I just give another call out for people to go back and listen to actually, I think it was the first and Zakis, I don't want to say her name incorrectly. She gave a great talk about leadership, actually, and there was a lot of relevant points and similar points that regarding leadership, and I think there's a lot of overlap. And I really think she gave a great talk, and I enjoyed it myself. And I would really think it'd be important for everyone to go back and listen to that as well, and maybe after this and see, the relevant points that we both share and commonalities. So. I usually, when I give a talk, like to give just a list of objectives so you have a sense of what we'll be talking about today and kind of relate it to yourself at the start of the lectures, about myself, and just a little bit about how I've gotten where I am now, where I am in my life now, and how I got here, and moving on. So again, the question of what makes a leader. So I think, again, this is different for different people. And I think we can talk about what some of maybe the more common definitions are and what people think of when they think of a leader. I'll share some qualities that I myself believe makes a good leader, and I think in general qualities that are good for anyone to have, but especially those that are looking to lead in different aspects of their life. And for you guys or anyone listening in, I hope that I can make this more relevant to your life, because I know sometimes when we think of leaders, we think of CEOs of companies or the president of the United States or world-renowned people. And I think if you're a high school student, it's sometimes hard to relate. I think hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips that you can translate into your own everyday life. And hopefully that'll take you forward into times where you will be a CEO of a company, if that's really what you want in your life. So again, just a little bit about me. So this is just a picture of where I work now. It's Boston. And so it's in Boston, Massachusetts. And it is actually ranked one of the top hospitals, only because obviously it's a great institution. It does great things. There's many great people that work here, and I just want to mention that again, because as we talk about leadership, I think that it's important for people to know the value of surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded individuals and people that are on the same path and have the same goal to be the best and leaders themselves. So I've trained at a lot of different places and I've worked at a lot of different places. And I have to say that a lot of times it's really always true, and it doesn't always, ring true for everything. But I will say, again, relating this to you, you find that there are certain resources or certain places or certain institutions that, have certain reputations or certain resources that seem to exude excellence or leadership. I think there is some truth in that. Being in those environments and using those resources can be helpful in your own life. And again, just that being around people who have chosen to work here at this institution oftentimes are very like-minded, and that they are choosing to be leaders in their fields and innovative, and are people that are really just striving to do better overall. That's really the goal that I find most relevant to myself. And I think that's an important lesson for people, again, starting out in school and high school and college, is, try to seek out those people that seem to be striving for the same goals that you are. And I think you'll find that it's really helpful in your life to be around people like that, and they'll push you further. So going back a little further, so the first picture up on the left is kind of a little life cycle there for me that I'm showing you guys. So upper left, I was born and raised in Queens, New York, is where I spent, at this point, probably not the most of my life, but I still consider it a majority of my life. I still consider that home for myself. I was born and raised there. I went to high school at Stuyvesant in Manhattan. And straight from high school, I ended up, after high school, moving up to upstate New York, Albany, New York, which is a few hours up north from the city. And I spent 7 years up there. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for undergrad college, and then subsequently went to Albany Medical College for medical school. And so again, just back to my training. So as a high school student, I was lucky in that I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go into medicine. And, for some of the common reasons that people do, some of the uncommon reasons that people choose to go into medicine, but either way, I was 100% sure that that's really what I wanted to do with my life. I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to do within medicine, but I was confident and sure enough in my decision that I knew that that's where I wanted to go. So I was able to make that choice at that point. And I think that decision has really helped guide me forward and has helped propel me. And it's helped teach me the value of being confident and sure in your decisions, and times when you're not, moving forward at times that you might have some doubt or might not have made the right decision. After medical school, I applied for residency. So that's the first stage of training after medical school. And that was 3 years for me doing pediatrics. And that was in New Jersey. And I worked at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. They have a children's hospital there, and that's where I did residency. And for me, I think it was some of the greatest 3 years that I've had. I met amazing people, worked with great people that, and wanting to be leaders in their field, highly intelligent, caring, really motivated people. And to this day, I think it's some of the best people that I've worked with. I actually spent a year between residency and fellowship. So between years of training, I actually worked for a year at Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital. So that's the children's hospital associated with Columbia University in New York. So I moved back to New York for a year, worked there in the neonatal intensive care unit, got a little bit of clinical. From there, moved again to Washington, D.C., so up there in the upper right corner of your screen. And that's where I spent another 3 years doing specifically pediatric cardiology. So that's devoted to the care of children with heart disease or problems with their heart. And I spent 3 years. After that, I moved to Boston. So I've been in Boston for about a year and 4 months. I moved here in June of 2015. I don't want to say the wrong year, June of 2015. And I've been here since. So that's just a little, again, history about where I've come from and my background and how I've ultimately ended up here. And so I just put this slide in just because I think even people that are in medicine, a lot of people don't even know what a cardiac intensive care physician does, a pediatric cardiac intensive care physician. So I included this picture, and it might look a little intimidating. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but this is actually a pretty accurate depiction of what a typical patient's room does look like in our unit. Like I said, there's a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of monitoring. We take care of children, like I mentioned, with heart disease, starting from little babies, like the one in that picture. If you look closely right in the middle, there's actually a little baby there. So we take care of little babies and children, and even sometimes adults that have heart disease, those that have had cardiac surgery. So I don't actually do the surgery, but I take care of them before and after. And so again, this, I wanted you guys to see this to just give you insight into what I do and, what my day-to-day experiences are. But I also wanted to show you that the real reason I do this, so the real reason that it's worth it for me to see this every day, it's a little scary, intimidating, nerve-wracking, is ultimately for this reason. So I love this picture, and that's why I included it in today. And I actually asked the family if I could include it here. and they were very excited to have it included. And I have a really close relationship with this family. But the patient on your right, the smaller Liana, and she actually was born not with any like heart disease, like a hole in her heart or anything like that, but she actually had significant enough problem with the muscle of her heart that she got very, very sick as a baby. She came to us when she was only like a month old, was very sick, was in our ICU for months, and actually got a heart transplant. And was, like I said, I'd cared for her pretty much my entire training. So I got to know this family very, very well. And this is actually her twin sister on the left. So, you can kind of see the difference in what heart disease and being in the hospital for a few years can do for you. But I show this picture because this is really why I do what I do. And this is my passion. And this and seeing kids like this is why I love going to work every day, because I know that if I can help kids get to this point in their life when maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago they weren't able to, this is what excites me. And this is what makes me happy to go to work, because I know that for a lot of the kids, this is actually what ends up being the outcome. So I just wanted to show you guys this to show you that it's not all about the scary stuff in the hospital. This is really why most of us do what we do. So going back to our topic, so what is a leader? So I've kind of hinted at this at the start of the talk. What makes a leader in your head? If somebody asks you, who is a leader, there's plenty of names you can, spout out. Like I said, whether it's world leaders, national leaders, political leaders, there's so many different things that you can bring up in your own mind. And I think that that's important. And I think it's true. I think what a leader is different for everybody, and you should make it what is relevant for you in your life and what matters to you. The definition, that's actually just what it is. Things mean different things to different people. And you can be a leader in different realms, like I said, of your life, whether it's professional, educational, personal, and you can even be even micro topics under that. And I think it's all important. And you can't really it's never a bad thing, I think, to be a leader in a certain area or aspect. And so for me, my own belief as to what a leader is, in my mind, when I think of a leader, I think of an innovator, I think of an educator, I think of someone who wants to be a change maker, hopefully for the better. And I think, going back to this, I think you can be a leader in any aspect of your life if that is what your goal is. And I think for some people it is, for some people it isn't. Some people are kind of taking a step back and being, not necessarily a leadership position. But I think I would, ask you guys to think past the classic definition of what you might think a leader is. I think I would like people to know that being in the sidelines and being not necessarily the face, at the front of something doesn't necessarily mean you're not a leader. And I think that's an important lesson to learn, that you can be a leader as someone who's not necessarily at the forefront of everything. And you can still be someone who's making changes and, contributing to the betterment of people or society or your group of friends. So I'm just going to bring up a few, I think, specific tips or areas that I focus on if you're looking towards becoming a leader or being more of a leadership role in your life. So I'll present probably 6 or 7 kind of general important areas to maybe spend a little time focusing on or putting your energy towards. And one of those for me, as I've mentioned, and I think a lot of people that I have worked with or interacted with that are successful, again, whatever that means in your own life of success, are those that really find or follow their passion. And I know that as, again, students in high school or, in college or early on in your life, you're just becoming an adult, quote unquote, this can, honestly be a little intimidating because you're just trying to figure out yourself and other, do things that you think are important. But I think that this is of paramount importance, contributing to that. And I think it's important for people to understand that it will contribute to all of that. Again, I truly believe that finding your passion and following your passion will lead to success in your life, whether, again, it's financial, professional, and I truly do believe that. And I think being happy in all aspects of your life will then circle around and make all the other parts of your life better. Again, you might just be starting to figure this out, but I think, and in reality, a lot of adults have trouble with this as well. So it's not really just a problem of age or maturity level. It's just something that I think you have to allow yourself to do. And one way of doing that is just really trying to have insight into yourself and being truthful to yourself and being true. Listen to your inner voice, listen to the thing that really draws you. You know, when you're doing one thing and you find your mind going to something else or thinking about other things or finding yourself drawn in terms of interest to other things, follow that. Sometimes it's important to listen to yourself and your thoughts. Be honest with yourself, be truthful to yourself. If something, again, seems interesting to you, give it some time. You might not have everyone supporting that, but I think, you know, there's ways to do this and still, you know, everyone has certain things that they need to do in your life. We all have, how do I say this? There's all of us have certain things that we just need to do, quote unquote, you know, like pay the bills and, like I say, do well in school. For me, I think that's something that generally should be somebody's goal. So I think, you know, being realistic in that you need to devote time to all those. But I think this is an important thing to do. And again, exploring, whether that's self-exploration, exploring different opportunities that come your way, like something you should or would want to do, but you know, I think you'll be surprised. And I think a lot of people that I've worked with or spoken with specifically on this topic have said that, you know, different phases of their life, asking them how they've gotten to that point of being a leader. A lot of times I've heard, you know, it was a fluke. Someone just happened to ask me to do this and I ended up doing it, not thinking I would want to, and it worked out perfectly. And so I've heard that enough in my life that I learned the value of sometimes just you didn't necessarily think would be worth doing. And I think if you have the time and energy to do that, I think it's really worthwhile. You know, I wanted to bring up this story again to make it relevant for your guys in your life, is that there's something that sticks out in my mind is while I was in residency, one of my colleagues sat me down and we were just doing work and he asked me, you know, if you could do anything in the world, if you could do anything and nobody could stop you and you could do it tomorrow, what would you do? You know, what would you be? And I gave it literally 2 seconds of thought. And this might sound cliche, but I realistically wanted to do besides what I was actually doing. I said, you know, to be honest with you, I'm doing what I love to do. I can't really realistically see myself doing anything else. And so I asked him, I said, well, what would you do? And with a straight face and with, you know, complete honesty, he said, I would be a rock star. I mean, I would be a music star. And I thought he was joking because to me, that is just something that some people say. And, you know, I didn't think that he was being serious, but he was. And I think that is great. And I think if people can recognize that, you know, that is your passion and that is what you want to do, you should go after it. And some are realistic, some aren't. And I think not everybody has that liberty, what their passion is or follow their passion. But I think if you really put time into it and explore it, it's worth doing, and you'll be surprised as to what things really can be realistic and are able to achieve. So finding, again, this might seem a little far-fetched at this stage in the game for some of you, but again, I think this goes along the lines of following a passion. So I've heard many people have told me throughout my training, throughout my life, that, you know, to be a leader in something and to be a quote unquote expert in something, finding a niche, so a specific area that is kind of a hidden gem that not many people know or do or are experts at, is a good way to stand out. So I just wanted to bring this up because I think it is a valuable point. And I think that if you do have a passion in something, and sometimes people think, you know I like this and I think this is interesting, but I don't think other people will. And I think that that's a question and a doubt that a lot of us have when we have interests or passions or think that something is important. But you will be surprised. This is a planet we live on. There's a lot of people, and you'd be surprised how many people have the same goals and interests that you do. So follow those passions, follow those niche areas that you think might just be you, and you'll probably not be alone in that. And again, just devoting time to this. And the other side of this is set in stone. Nothing is solid. Things are fluid. You're young. You have plenty of time. If you're wrong or you decide that you've given time to something and it's not what you love, it's not right for you, you can change your mind. This is about you and what you want to do and what, you know, where you see yourself going. And there are plenty of people. Actually, if you take a list of, a common list of people who are considered leaders, whether it's let's just take the technology world, Mark Zuckerberg, and these people who, if you actually look in their history, oftentimes they've made choices in their life and changed their mind, and they've done things dramatic. So I think those are good examples of people who actually have done that and it's worked out. And a lot of times that is what happens. So I think don't be scared of change, and don't feel that any decision is forever. You can change your mind, and oftentimes you'll actually find luck in that. Another important thing to mention, and not, no pun intended, but mentorship. So I think this slide is predominantly about finding, about you being kind of a mentor in your own life. But in this aspect, I think it's important to find mentors. And I say friends versus foes there because I think it's important to recognize that, you'll interact with a lot of adults or other leaders on a day-to-day basis, whether it's your teachers or your family. And I think it's an important point to make that people that are the best mentors might not necessarily be the best friends. So just because you get along with someone and you like spending time with them, that might not necessarily be the best person to be a mentor. And excuse me, not all mentors function for all areas of your life. I.e., you can have a research mentor. You can have a separate person, completely separate, who's a clinical mentor. You can have a life mentor, someone who you feel that they've lived their life and, followed certain personal dreams that you feel like, I want them to help me kind of guide or give me advice about those aspects. So I think an important lesson that I learned is you can have multiple mentors in life, and it's probably good to do that because, as we all know, we can't all be experts at everything. And so certain people are good at certain things. And again, I just want to reiterate, I think, it's great if you can find a mentor who is your friend and is, that you love from a personal side. But I think it's important to realize that it might not always be the case. So don't necessarily turn people away if they don't fit that bill. On the other hand, I don't think it works well if you're completely, adversarial with someone. If someone you don't get along at all and you just, you can't really spend any extra time with them, that's probably not the best person. People who are great at, being leaders or being the head of things, but they're not necessarily great mentors. So again, I think you can people in certain ways, but they might not necessarily be the best mentors. And there's skills towards being a good mentor. So I think finding those people out, and again, it might mean finding people that you see are mentors to other people and approaching them and saying, I've noticed that you've helped so-and-so do this. Would you mind, sitting down with, it, some people might be comfortable with it. Some people might not be, but you'll only know if you ask or if you try. And I think mentorship is a huge thing for me. And personally, in my life, I have to say that, yes, I followed my passion and I've gone the road that I think is best for me, but I can't say that was not or, helped molded by great mentors that I've had in my life. And I've had numerous people throughout the various stages of my training that have been mentors to me. Again, clinical, personal, professional, and all different aspects. And they have helped guide me, and I give great credit to those people. So I think that mentorship and finding good mentorship is a huge part of this. Communication. So again, a very kind of broad topic, and I purpose strokes here in terms of certain areas because I want to make this, work for you, and you can connect it however you want to your life and, certain aspects of your life that work for you and make it relevant for you to impact your day-to-day practice. So I think talking about communication, it is a skill, and I think a lot of times we don't realize that. We learn how to communicate from the time we're born, and so a lot of us just think it's just a necessity and we have to do this, and you just do what comes naturally. But I think by the time you're talking about being a leader, being a part of a leadership team, communication is huge. And I think, again, it's a skill, so it needs to be practiced. You need to take time to devote to it. And when I say, I think it's a good skill to take time to arrange your thoughts. If you're in school and there's something that you need to speak to your professors about, take a minute to sit down and just in your own head, just go through, okay, this is my point. This is what I want to say. This is how I want to say it. This is what I want the person to receive. How would I receive it if I said it this way? And I think taking those extra minutes can be very helpful. And, not always just in your own head. I think speaking or not, again, whether you're having a one-on-one meeting with someone, whether you're going to be sitting down with someone to talk to them about something that you want to propose, sit down might sound cliche or funny to some people, but sit down in front of a mirror, sit down in an empty room and speak the words that makes a difference. And you will, once you get used to hearing yourself speak, you will get better at it. I need to do more of this. We all, I think, could do better at this. And there are some people that when you hear a great speaker speak, it makes you strive to want to do that. And I think some great leaders, it's a skill that will really propel you forward. And if you can communicate effectively, communicate well, and not just in a public speaking forum, I think it's a great skill to have, and it's an asset. And those that communicate well generally, people will flock to you if they find they don't communicate well, and they'll try to use your talents and your skills. I think it's a huge, skill and asset to have. And in the same topic, I think a lot of times if we have a lot of ideas and a lot of things we want to try to communicate, we just get excited and we want to say everything out loud. And again, if you haven't practiced and if you haven't gone through it in your head, I think just a good tip to have is not only be direct, but be specific, and maybe if you have 5 things that you want a finite amount of time, pick 2 or 3 and just be very specific on those things. And that way you can be as effective on those 3 things instead of being kind of just 50% on everything else. Again, and just be direct with your message and be sure in your message, because if you're not sure, those listening to you won't be sure themselves. People will feed off of you. So in line with communicating is listening. So I am a huge proponent, believe in the importance of listening. And they talk about active listening and passive listening. And I think there's a thing that you hear, which is, you can hear, but are you actually listening? Don't just hear, listen. And I think act is, again, a skill, and it's something that is an important quality that good leaders have. If you're leading a group of people in any aspect of your life, it's something that you need to be able to do, to listen to those that are leading. And, feedback is another huge thing. I think you need to be a good leader, willing to recognize that, not everyone will react to you the same way. And some people will react positively, some people will react negatively, but being open to that feedback and being able to communicate back and forth is very important. So knowing your limits, I think that, we all want to be great at everything we do in our lives. We all want to be the best at everything. The reality of that is that it's probably not possible. Not everybody can be an expert at everything. Not everybody can be great at everything. Going back to finding your passion and gaining experience, I think it's finding that balance of saying yes to things and being able to say no to things. There has to be a balance of opportunities, and knowing that you just cannot say yes to everything. You can't do everything. There's only 24 hours in the day. And if you're doing too many things, you can't be the best at them all. So, again, everything is not linear. Things are, kind of in a cycle. So I think this all relates to finding your passion, finding a niche. It's all within each other. And so being able to say that, I think what you're proposing here sounds like a great idea, but it's just probably not the right thing for me to do right this moment. And maybe I can help find for you someone else who would be the good person to do that. I think that's a good way of saying no to people, and saying no in a way that doesn't necessarily close doors forever is another skill. So I think those are important lessons to learn, and know when it's the right time to say no. So if you look back on my history and my my past and how I've gotten here. Some might say that, I make the joke all the time. People make the joke to me that you've been in school forever, you're crazy. I technically just started my first quote unquote official job, being an attending physician. And so it was funny for me to put this slide up because I thought, well, obviously if I'm saying this, people are going to think, well, this is just your experience. Not everybody, being in school forever is not the right thing for everybody. And I 100% agree. And by lifelong learning, it's not what I mean at all. Some of the best leaders in the world, some of the best leaders in this country, some of the best leaders in your own lives are probably people who have had limited, formal education, finished high school, maybe finished college, maybe, none of this relates to that. When I say lifelong learning, I really mean that you can learn from all aspects of your life. I think just being open, again, going back to listening, all of the slides just relate to one common theme. Being open to learning from those that you might not have expected yourself to learn from. I think we can all learn from everyone in our lives. So again, if you have a passion, if you find a certain area that you want to focus on and you see yourself going forward with that goal of doing a specific thing, understanding that 5-10 years from now things will change, and what you learned 10 years ago is probably not what is up to date now. So being able to keep your ears open and your eyes open, and knowing that somebody that's up and coming will probably have more knowledge about the current up to date. And so that doesn't mean that you won't be the leader anymore, but I think the best leaders are those that are willing to keep learning and keep their ears open and listen to the people around them and learn from, willing to be change and be fluid in their process. And again, this all leads back to mentorship and having a mentor and being a mentor, listening. So I think that's a huge, huge thing. And I think it's important to say that, sometimes when you put these titles in your head, like, oh, I'm the leader of this group, or I'm the leader of this so-and-so, you want to project that title to other people. And it might be a little intimidating to then show, well, if I'm the leader, I can't let people know that I'm learning or that I don't know everything. But I think, again, it doesn't seem inherently obvious, but I think the best leaders and the ones that are the most respected are those people that can say, I don't know everything. Yes, technically I am the president of this company, or I am the head of this project, but I still know that there's lessons you can teach me. And I think having that ability to do that and take a step back, in fact, make you a better leader. And I've seen that in my own life, and I actually try to live that myself. And I think it's been a positive experience for me. And I think this slide is a huge part of my own life. And I think it is very true. And I think, I picked this picture because this person obviously was running in a major race, probably the Olympics, and you get up to that platform and something like this happens. And I think something like this, again, whether it's something as simple as, you thought you did fantastically well and you gave it your all and you put in 100%, and then you get it back and it's gotten this, C-, and you feel like you've failed and this is the worst thing in your life. And at the moment it is. And I think recognizing that, failure at any point in your life at that point is really can feel horrible and can feel like you are not worth anything at that moment. And, it's just all of the worst feelings that you can have. But I truly believe that failure happens, and it actually positivity comes out of it. And I think with every failure, you learn something. And as long as you're willing to learn from your mistakes and move forward and be confident in your choices, that this happens to everybody. Everybody has failed at some point in their life. But if you know what you want to do and you have your goals, you move forward. And I think this is important to recognize, because I know that at the moment that bad things happen or failures happen, it's hard to see past that. But I think it's very important to know and to convince yourself that failure always leads to a new opportunity. There's always an open door that comes after. And I've lived my life that way. And I think it's also very important to not ever let the fear of failure hold you back. And I think that's a huge thing for many people. We all try to be realistic, and we all try to be, save ourselves from failure and save ourselves from mistakes. But I think you should never let just the fear of failure hold you back from anything. Because again, you have time. If you fail, you pick yourself back up and you move forward. And I think, again, the experience and the life lessons you learn from the different failures in your life will just make, again, a better leader. And again, just to reiterate, I think some of the best leaders in the world, in all aspects of life, have been those that have, quote unquote, failed. So I think that's a huge lesson to honestly consistently and constantly remind yourself about, because it'll have aspects of real life. And from that, I think another important lesson is to maintain positivity. So maintain your confidence, always look forward. I think it's important that, again, to be in high school or be in college and have this goal that, I want to be the CEO of my own company in 5 years. That could happen. That could be, a realistic goal to set. But I think if you're going to set that goal, then you should have some smaller goals set up, shorter periods of time. So I always like to think that, you should set a long-term goal, or a goal that is like your ultimate goal, but, smaller things that are more attainable in a finite, smaller period of time. And I think that'll make your ultimate goal more realistic and more of a reality for you in the future, and will actually help you attain that goal, maybe even sooner than you thought. But again, those stages of your life and throughout this process, you're going to have failures, and there will be people that tell you can't do things. There will be people telling you that you've made the wrong choices and this is not what you should be doing. And as long as you're confident in yourself and you feel that you've made the right decision for yourself, in the end, you always know yourself better than anybody else knows you. And I don't want to say that you should discredit everybody in your life. Your parents, they love you. People around you love you. They mean the best for you, but that doesn't always mean that they know what's best for you. If there's a goal you have in mind, something that you see yourself doing, and you're not exactly getting the most positive response from everyone around you, and that, again, you know yourself better than anyone else does. And so stay with that thought. And I think we all have self-doubt at different stages of our life at different points. It's probably a daily thing for some people. And that's normal. Not everybody feels the most confident. But I think that there is a limit to the amount of self-doubt you can really have to be an effective leader. You need to be confident. You need to get past your own self. And I think that's, we are all of our own worst critics. And I think if you can get past your own self-doubt, you'll be amazed at how much less doubt there really is out there in the world for someone that's confident in the choices that they're making. So I think that's a huge thing. So talking about mentorship, again, this is the other flip side of the coin, which is to be a mentor. And again, you might think, well, who am I going to be a mentor for? How can I be a mentor? I'm, 15, 16, 17 years old. What do I know to be a mentor about? But I think the lesson is all of us can be a mentor to somebody. Again, whether that is mentoring the person who's a grade level below you in school, whether that's mentoring a friend on, something outside of school, whether that's mentoring someone who's older than you or more mature than you about something else. There's mentorship in different, again, and I think once you gain a certain level of experience in anything, you can be a mentor in that realm. And I think it's important to realize that mentorship reinforces your own skills. So even though you're being a mentor to someone else, it's a self-benefiting process, and that actually reinforces your own skills and maybe even your own knowledge gaps. And you thought, I thought I knew this really well, but I feel like when I'm teaching this to someone else, there's certain parts of it that I'm messing up on, or that I could do better on. And so I think mentorship is a great process in that it reiterates to you what you need to still keep working on, and things that you could get better at. And so it's a cycle, is that as you're teaching someone else, you're also getting better at it yourself. And there's a common saying that a lot of us, maybe in medicine and probably other fields, say too, which is see one, do one, teach one. So you are the mentee in one aspect at one time of your life. You quickly will then be the person doing it. So you'll be the person with the skill, and then you quickly become the person teaching it. So I think don't get stuck in your ways. And one real life example of this is if you're doing a group project at school and you're very good at artwork, and so you think, I'm just going to volunteer to do the cover art because I know that I'm good at that, and I know I can do it with my eyes closed and I'll be fine. Maybe next time decide to be the group leader, and you decide, I don't love speaking in front of people, I don't love being in charge, but I'm going to try this, and I'm going to experiment, and I'm going to force myself to do this. And I think stepping outside of the box and being that person in a leadership position will be helpful. And it doesn't always work. Failures happen. It's not the end of the world, but I think it's a great lesson, and it can help push you forward probably faster than you would have expected that you would propel forward in certain areas of your life. So those were the main tips, and I think really important things that I wanted to speak with you all about. And I hope that was useful for all of you. And again, I would really suggest that everyone go back and listen to Erin's talk that I believe she gave in February of last year about leadership. And I think, again, we talk about a lot of similar things and some different things, but it's a great talk. And this is my contact information. So if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out about anything, honestly, whether it's what I talked about today or where I am in my life or questions about pursuing this career, please reach out. My email address is there. And just want to give a little intro to the next speaker's talk. So Rose Afriye, again, I don't want to mispronounce her name, and she'll be talking about getting involved, and that's on November 19th, 2016. So I believe if there is anyone listening, there's time for questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Nair. I think that was amazing. I think there was so much packed in that talk, and I'm not exactly starting with my career, but I'm also not exactly at that place in my life where I can say that I have, established myself really well. And I do think that I learned a lot from this talk. I do have one question that, you kind of went over this concept of finding your niche, and then you also went over lifelong learning and leading. And maybe you can shed some light on, like I said, I'm sort of still growing and moving in my career. And sometimes you feel as though, as you learn more about yourself and more about the field that you're in, you might discover that I thought this was my passion, I thought this was my niche, but really this isn't as satisfying, or this isn't as fulfilling. And at that point, how do you suggest that, we still sort of move on, or how do you suggest we switch paths and still sort of maintain this quality of leading, probably ourselves, with whatever next decision that we're making?
So I think it would be very easy for me to say, well, if you know something's not your passion and it doesn't feel right, then follow what is. But I think that's not a really realistic way of looking at things. And I think, we're all at some point, whether you are now or not, we're all adults, and we're all going to be adults, and you've all got to get to the point in your life where you're, again, the real life things of paying your bills and having a job and doing those things. So I think, I unfortunately in my life only have experience in the field of medical training. And so I know that side of it very well. And I know that it is, unfortunately, can be very difficult in our line of work to drastically change your career path, but it can be done. There's people who I know who did one residency, who did one field, and then really felt like this is not my passion, this is not what I like doing. And And it's easy for me to say this because I haven't really changed, and they've decided, I know I did 3 years of training or 5 years of training, but I don't have the passion for this, and I just know doing it that it's not the right thing. Decided to apply for another training program and what they feel is right. And there's also, and if it's not medicine, there's people who I know who have left medicine and who have left clinical care to do industry, or clinical care to do research, or clinical care to not do medicine at all and go to law school or go to business school. And so it would be easy, because it's definitely not. But I think speaking to any of those people that I personally know or that I've interacted with, in the end, whether that's months or years, they've all said that it was the right thing to do and that they are much happier now. And again, I don't think I have a quick and easy solution for it, but I do think that speaking as someone who hasn't really had to do it, so I don't want to speak out of turn, I think that it can be done. And I think that there's questions and there'll be concerns and probably financial things and all different things. I think going back to mentorship, maybe seeking out people that have done it. There are resources that are available usually in the workplace, that you can try and find people that maybe have done it, or reach out to people outside of your workplace if you don't want people, to be involved, that you have actually done it, and get their experience and find out from them, well, what did you do in this situation? Another side of it is, while you're in your current field or doing what you're doing, is, again, maybe with the lifelong learning process, is, taking classes outside of your area of work. So, if I am a pediatric doctor, but I feel like I really like the business side of it, I really like the financial aspects of it, but I don't like the clinical side, then maybe I'll take an MBA and maybe still work for a few years so that I can pay my bills and do those things, but take some MBA classes and get my MBA, so that then in 2 or 3 years, then I can maybe find a job somewhere else. So I think it's hard. I think it would be a difficult decision to make. And I don't think oftentimes it's not an easy decision to make, but my true belief is that if you are not passionate in what you do, you really won't be able to do it well. And I think that's true in all areas, in all fields, whether it's business or technology or medicine or, working in a store or anything. If you are not a passionate person or you don't love what you do, I truly believe you really can only do it well to a certain extent, be evident to other people too. So there are plenty of people who do it, but I think if you're trying to be a leader in your field, or you're trying to be a leader in your life, I think you should be honest about that. And again, I don't think it's easy at all. I think it's a difficult decision people have to make, but I think if you're honest with yourself, there are ways to do it. And again, if it's, within medicine, there's people who have done it. Within business, I know there's people that have done it. There are people that have gone from being lawyers to, owning their own business and such. So, and I think that nowadays there are resources and, forums or people you can reach, and you can ask them, well, how exactly did you do it? And what would you suggest for someone like me? And I think it might be intimidating too, because oftentimes if you're working with people and you don't have that passion for it, oftentimes people, this is the way I feel about it, you don't want people in your field that don't want to be doing it. And so I generally feel like we're all human beings. And so those that are around you should support you in that as well. And so, reach out to, again, your mentors, to family, to whoever that you think will be supportive. And at this point, I would say seek out people who are supportive people, positive people who are helpful, and help that process move forward.
Yeah, thank you. That was, I think that was really well put. To emphasize to our younger listeners, she talked about a lot of her colleagues who have decided to change careers really late, after they've already been trained and invested a lot of time and money in a certain field. And one of the reasons that I asked that question is because a lot of times we do feel that, my parents think I should be a certain thing, and we just sort of accept that. And it's never really too late to kind of find your passion and really do what you're passionate about. And like Dr. Nair said, it may not be easy, but I think, I think you kind of hit it on the spot. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions?
And I think I'm
getting
I'm getting a few questions by on here on the chat here, and I'm
please
asking just to explain what a day or week in my life looks like, and just talking about balancing career and personal life, and just basically balancing my life. So a day in my life. So working in an ICU, generally speaking, most of us don't work every day in the ICU because, as I showed in that picture, and as most of us know, the ICU can be a very intense environment. So it's usually the type of place where when you work for a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time and you go in every day, go in pretty early. A week when I'm covering the ICU is that I go in at 7. I get sign out on the patients from the person who was covering overnight. And so that person tells me and gives me a brief rundown as to like all the patients in the unit, tells me what happened with them overnight, tells me about any active issues that are going on. And then I care for that patient all day. We walk around as a team, we come up with a plan, we talk about what our plans for the day are, what our plans for the week is, our ultimate goals for the patient, whether it's, taking their breathing tube out or taking some medications away from them or giving them some new medications. Basically, our ultimate goal is the ICU and home. So whatever we can do to do that. I usually, when I'm working on service, can get home anytime between 6 to 8 p.m., depending on how busy the unit is. And again, this is my day. Different units are run differently. But generally speaking, there's usually someone who covers the patients during the day and then someone who covers them at night. And I do that for a week or 2 at a time. And I work for probably, a portion of the year doing that. Now, in the weeks that I'm not covering the ICU, actually like physically, I do research. So I have an office and I do clinical research. I don't work in a lab, but we take clinical problems that we deal with on a day-to-day basis and try to translate that to a research project. And then we will develop a research project, usually a group of us. So me and other ICU physicians or other medical students, residents. So we usually involve trainees, and we'll come up with a problem. We'll discover problems and try and come up with a possible solution and test that solution using research. So that's what I do in my off clinical time. Talking about balancing life and work. So I think, again, this is different for different people. I love what I do, so I don't mind that I spend a lot of time in the hospital, but honestly, I have plenty of time not in the hospital. So when I'm not covering the ICU for a week at a time, I don't have to be into the hospital at 7 o'clock. Take my time in the morning, have breakfast at home, go in later on in the morning. I sit in my office. I can do my work at my own pace. But again, we have deadlines. If something is due in a week, I need to make sure that I get that done. But I think that when you have a passion for something, you will find a balance. And I think it can be hard. Again, there's oftentimes that there's people who are having to get pulled out of the hospital and being told your child is at home. Luckily, I don't have children myself yet. So I will say that that is an easy thing for me to deal with because I don't have a baby at home. And I'm sure that if I did, and I know people that do, that can be tougher. But again, many people make it work. And it's a testament to people's passion for help they have, whether it's family or friends or nannies or babysitters, significant others. I think you find a way to make things work. And I have to say that I think looking at friends and family that do other careers, a lot of times medicine gets it's your whole life and you're in the hospital all the time. But I have to say those of people that I know that do business and technology and IT and other things, they get pulled in that thing with themselves too, that when they have a project that's due and have to work on their computers at home on Saturdays and Sundays, they're making that decision. So I think in general, it's possible to have a balance and it's possible to do both. I hate to say that, you can't do everything well, but I think you should decide what is important to you. If you think that it's important for you to be at every, every school play and every sports game and every assembly and everything for your child. And I think realistically, you have to know what career will allow you to do that. And I don't think there is one career that will or won't. You will have to find that balance for you. If you don't have that, and if you're someone who wants to be at your job 100% of the time, there's plenty of jobs where you can do that. So I think this goes back to knowing what your passion is and what what you see yourself doing, and that balance will come. And again, I have to give credit to friends, people who have helped me out throughout the course, people who are willing to cover me a day at work when I have something personal to do. So those are all ways that you can make your life balanced and make it work. And what are some qualities that one might need to succeed in my specific field? So my specific field of being cardiac intensive care, or pediatric cardiac intensive care. So again, it's a very intensive field. It's a very specific field. So there's actually, I don't know the exact number, but there's really only maybe less than 100 in the country that actually take care of these types of patients, probably even much less than 100. So it's a very, I would say smallish field compared to other fields. So I actually like that. I like that I do something that not a lot of people do. I like that I work in an ICU. I like it's a very intense environment. So I think those that are successful in this field, number one, again, they just love they love what they do. I love taking care of children. Some people, it's not right for everyone. I love interacting with children. I love being around kids all day. I love being able to figure out what's going on with them without them being able to tell me what's going on with them. And I love being able to see them go home with their families at the end of the day. For me, that is what makes my day worth it. And I think being successful in that means being someone who's willing to do that. Being in an intense environment, it's taxing, it's stressful, it takes a lot of energy. But I think at the end, if you find that it's worth it, it'll be worth it for you. So. I think that's it for the other questions that I have.
Perfect. I think we're reaching towards the end of our allotted time for the webinar as well. If the listeners do have any other questions, either now or maybe when you're out today, like trick or treating, all of a sudden you're thinking about something that Dr. Nair said, and you're like, oh my God, I have this burning question. I have to ask her. Her email is on our Speak Mentorship website. So you can contact her and, ask away. And it's on the slide information as well that Dr. Nair just pulled up. And thank you so much, Dr. Nair. I think this was a wonderful introduction to our speaker series. And I, for one, definitely learned a lot. So I'm going to try to be a better leader and a better mentor, and hopefully find some good mentors myself as well. So thank you again. And
great.
I hope everyone has a great weekend. Happy Halloween.
Thanks again. Okay.